The final whistle blew at the Etihad Stadium on April 19th, 26, and the Premier League title race changed its shape entirely. Manchester City had just beaten Arsenal 2-1. Erling Haaland had delivered the decisive blow. And now, for the first time in a long time, the question being asked was no longer whether Arsenal would win the league. The question had become, can Arsenal still hold on? Arsenal came into this game as league leaders. They were 3 points clear. They had the momentum, the confidence and the belief that this was finally going to be their year. But 90 minutes of football at the Etihad had not only taken 3 points away from them, it had shifted the entire psychology of this title race. And that is where we need to start. Let us be very clear about what was at stake today. Arsenal sat top of the Premier League table going into this fixture. A win would have put them 6 points clear of Manchester City with only 5 games remaining. 6 points at that stage of the season, with that fixture list ahead, would have been almost impossible to overturn. Arsenal would have been staring down the barrel of their first league title in over 2 decades. Instead, the gap now sits at just 3 points. And critically, Manchester City still have a game in hand. That means if City win that game in hand by 2 goals or more against Burnley, they could move level with Arsenal or even above them on points. The mathematics of this title race have shifted dramatically in the space of 90 minutes. Now, before we go deeper into everything that happened today, if you are serious about Arsenal analysis, if you want the full picture broken down properly every time something this significant happens, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to give you honest, detailed and informed analysis every single time. Now, let us get into it. What actually happened at the Etihad? Let us start with the match itself. The Premier League confirmed the final score as Manchester City 2, Arsenal 1. Looking at the statistics from the game, the picture becomes very interesting very quickly. Manchester City had 15 shots to Arsenal's 9. City had 5 shots on target, Arsenal had 3. City completed 406 passes compared to Arsenal's 254. City had 58.8% possession against Arsenal's 41.2%. City had 40 touches in the opposition box compared to Arsenal's 14. On the surface, those numbers tell you City were dominant. But here is where the analysis gets more nuanced. The expected goals figure told a different story. Manchester City's expected goals total came in at 1.41. Arsenal's expected goals total came in at 1.53. That means Arsenal actually created higher quality chances than Manchester City. They just failed to convert them. The evidence suggests that Arsenal were not as outplayed as the scoreline might initially indicate. They had the big moments in front of goal. They simply were not clinical enough to take them. And that is the real story of this match. Not that Arsenal were dominated, but that Arsenal missed their opportunities at the most critical moment of the season. How the goals happened. The opening goal came from Rayan Cherki. The Manchester City midfielder danced through the Arsenal backline, getting past both Gabriel Magalhaes and Declan Rice, before guiding the ball into the bottom corner past David Raya. It was a moment of individual quality that punished Arsenal for a lapse in their defensive structure. However, Arsenal responded quickly and showed genuine character. Within minutes of going behind, Kai Havertz led a relentless press deep into the Manchester City half. Gianluigi Donnarumma, the City goalkeeper, had his back against the wall as Havertz closed him down aggressively. Donnarumma attempted to clear his lines but smashed the ball directly into the Arsenal striker. The ball ricocheted into the net. Arsenal were level. That moment showed exactly what this Arsenal team is built on: hard work, pressing intensity and refusal to give up. They did not drop their heads after going behind. They pressed even harder and forced an error from a world-class goalkeeper. That is not a lucky goal. That is the direct result of a well-drilled, aggressive system working exactly as Mikel Arteta designed it. Then came the decisive moment. Midway through the second half, Haaland put Manchester City back in front with what was described as a clever finish after wrestling Gabriel to the ground. It was a moment of physical dominance and ruthlessness from the Norwegian striker, and it proved to be the winner. Arsenal missed chances, the woodwork story. One of the most painful details of this afternoon was Arsenal hitting the woodwork not once, but twice. Eberechi Eze struck the upright when the score was 1-1. That was a moment when Arsenal had all the momentum. Had that gone in, everything changes. Arsenal go ahead. City need to chase the game. The psychology shifts entirely. Then, even more dramatically, Gabriel Magalhaes struck the post later in the match as Arsenal desperately pushed for an equaliser. The Premier League's own coverage acknowledged just how close Arsenal came to levelling the score. That is the fine line between being remembered as the team that fought back and won at the Etihad and being the team that came away with nothing. And then there was the 95th minute moment that left Mikel Arteta on his knees on the touchline. Kai Havertz had a golden chance to equalise deep in stoppage time. The chance fell. Havertz could not convert it. And Arteta, watching from the sidelines, dropped to his knees in despair. That single image captured the agony of this Arsenal performance. So much quality, so much effort, and yet the ball would not go in. The Gabriel situation, lucky to still be on the pitch now. Let us talk about Gabriel Magalhaes, because his afternoon was extraordinary in more ways than one. On the positive side, he is the Premier League centre-back with the most clean sheets this season, 13 in total. William Saliba, Mark Gay, Ruben Dias and James Tarkowski are all on 11. Gabriel leads them all. That is a remarkable defensive record that should not be overlooked. But today, Gabriel was fortunate in two separate incidents. In the first half, television cameras captured the Arsenal defender pulling Haaland's hair during a physical duel. That kind of action is classified as violent conduct by the Professional Game Match Officials Limited. Lisandro Martinez was recently sent off and handed a 3-match ban for a similar incident involving Dominic Calvert-Lewin. An appeal was rejected and the ban was upheld. Gabriel escaped any punishment in that first incident. Then in the second half, Gabriel and Haaland went head-to-head in another confrontation. Gabriel arched his neck and brought his head into Haaland. Both players were booked for the exchange. The officials decided the action was not excessively aggressive or violent. Both players stayed on the pitch. The reality for Arsenal is that their most important defensive player was extremely fortunate not to have been reduced to 10 men. Had Gabriel been dismissed in either incident, this result could have been even worse. Despite all of that, Haaland spoke about the battle generously after the match. His message was clear. Gabriel is an amazing player. It was a nice battle. That kind of mutual respect between two elite competitors is one of the best things in football. But from Arsenal's analytical perspective, they cannot afford to keep putting their best defender in positions where a red card is possible. Guardiola after the match, what his words reveal. Pep Guardiola's post-match comments were fascinating. On one hand, he was honest enough to acknowledge that Arsenal are still top of the league. He pointed out that Arsenal have a better goal difference. He said, and these are his confirmed words, the reality is, who is top of the league? We are not. Goal difference, who is better? They are. That is a remarkably humble and accurate assessment from the City manager after a home win. But Guardiola also allowed himself some satisfaction. He confirmed that he is aware of how difficult Arsenal are to beat. He said he knows how difficult it is to beat them once, and doing it twice in 3 weeks is extraordinary. He described Arsenal as an extraordinary team who compete brilliantly in duels and long balls and second balls. There is also a stat that adds enormous weight to Guardiola's satisfaction today. He has now won all 4 of his Premier League games when Manchester City have started the day second in the table and faced the league leaders. That makes him the joint most successful manager in Premier League history in that specific situation, alongside Sir Alex Ferguson. That is not a small thing. That speaks to a pattern, a mentality and a tactical ability to raise the level precisely when the pressure is highest. Guardiola also had a humorous moment when asked about Haaland's battle against Gabriel and William Saliba. He said he would not like to be Haaland having to face those two defenders. He joked that he would prefer to read a book, but beneath the humour, his praise was genuine. He acknowledged that Haaland handled an extraordinarily difficult physical battle very well. Mikel Arteta, a manager under pressure but refusing to bend. Arteta's reaction after the match was one of controlled defiance. In his post-match press conference, he made several important statements. He confirmed the title race is not over. He pointed out that Arsenal still have 5 games to play and Manchester City have 6. Arsenal remain 3 points ahead. He described the run of remaining fixtures as a new league, suggesting the team need to reset mentally and approach each game as its own challenge. His message to his players was equally clear. He said he believes in this team. He said he sees them every single day in training. He knows the level they possess. He admitted that Arsenal lost a big opportunity today, but he also insisted there are still a lot of positives to take from the performance. The most striking moment came after the full-time whistle on the pitch. Declan Rice was caught on camera by Sky Sports crossing paths with Martin Ødegaard in the middle of the pitch. In that moment, Rice delivered a 3-word message directly to his captain. He said, "It is not over," 3 words. But given the context of that moment, with the City fans celebrating around them, with the title race suddenly tightened, those 3 words carried enormous weight. Martin Ødegaard, captain's composure. Ødegaard's reaction after the match revealed a player carrying the weight of disappointment with genuine maturity. He confirmed in his post-match comments that Arsenal were genuinely up for this game. He said the high press was really good and that the team created some big moments in the second half. But he was also honest about the failure to convert. He said Arsenal were not sharp enough in front of goal, and he accepted that at this level, small margins decide games like this. He did not make excuses. He did not point fingers. He simply acknowledged reality and immediately looked forward to the next challenge. On the title race specifically, his words were measured and professional. He confirmed Arsenal are going to keep going, focus on themselves, look forward to the next game and move on. That is the mentality of a player who understands pressure and refuses to be consumed by it. What the statistics and analysts are saying from a data perspective, the shift in title odds has been dramatic. Before today's match, the Opta supercomputer gave Arsenal an 85.2% chance of winning the Premier League. After the result, that figure dropped to 73%. Manchester City's probability rose from 14.8% to 27%. On prediction markets, the shift was even more dramatic. On March 19th, Arsenal were given a 91% probability of winning the title. Manchester City sat at just 9%. By April 19th, the day of this match, Arsenal had fallen to 44% and Manchester City had risen to 56%. That is a swing of 47 percentage points in 1 month. The betting markets have flipped from near certainty in Arsenal's favour to slight favourites for Manchester City. That is what one defeat can do at this stage of the season. And it is why every single remaining game is now a cup final. Roy Keane, the critical voice, Roy Keane, speaking on Sky Sports after the match, was direct and unsparing in his assessment. He said Arsenal players need to be self-critical. He pointed specifically to the winning goal and described Arsenal's defensive shape in that moment as players being all over the place. His conclusion was blunt. He said that kind of disorganisation could be the difference between winning and losing the league. That is a serious observation from someone who won the league multiple times. It is not an attack on the players. It is a challenge to them. Keane is identifying a specific moment, a specific breakdown in structure, and saying that at the highest level, those moments decide everything. And right now, those moments have not gone Arsenal's way. Patrick Vieira, the voice of experience, Patrick Vieira, a man who knows what it takes to win this league as an Arsenal player, offered a measured and honest analysis. He said he was really disappointed from Arsenal's perspective because they played the game that was expected. He acknowledged Arsenal performed well, but he pointed to experience and the ability to manage big games as the decisive difference. He said Manchester City managed the game much better in the second half, especially once they regained the lead. That is a hard truth for Arsenal supporters to sit with. The suggestion is that City, for all their struggles this season, still have an organisational maturity and a big game mentality that Arsenal have not yet fully acquired. The 4-game losing run, a statistical warning. One of the most concerning statistics to emerge from this period is the fact that Arsenal have now lost 4 consecutive games in domestic league and cup competitions. That is the first time this has happened under Arteta. It is also the first time the club has suffered such a run since March 2018. That previous run also included 2 losses to Manchester City. The situation is clear. Arsenal are in a form dip at the worst possible moment. They had the title within their grasp. And now, with 5 games remaining, they go into that run with questions over their confidence, their clinical edge, and their ability to manage pressure under the weight of expectation. Bernardo Silva, a confident Man City perspective Manchester City midfielder, Bernardo Silva offered an interesting perspective when speaking after the match. His view was calm and confident. He said he does not think both teams will win all of their remaining games. What he is suggesting is that slip-ups will happen, that neither Arsenal nor Manchester City will have a perfect run in. In his mind, that means this title race will go right down to the final day. That is actually a rational and reasonable view. At this stage of the season, with the pressure this intense, dropped points are almost inevitable. The question is not who wins every game. The question is who drops points first and how many they drop. The Arsenal supporters in the away end, one detail that should not be overlooked is what happened in the Arsenal away end after the final whistle. Despite the defeat, the Arsenal supporters stayed in their section, applauding and cheering their players. That kind of support after a painful loss, especially in an opponent's ground, is significant. It tells the players that the supporters understand what is at stake. It tells them they are still believed in. And in moments of pressure, that connection between supporters and players matters more than it ever does during comfortable wins. What the remaining fixtures mean. Arsenal have 5 games remaining in the league. Manchester City have 6. which includes the game in hand against Burnley. The situation is Arsenal must win their games. They cannot afford further slip-ups. If City win their game in hand by 2 or more goals, the gap could disappear entirely. At that point, Arsenal would need to rely on their own results and hope that City drop points somewhere in their remaining fixtures. Every Arsenal fan knows the history. They have been here before. They have led late in title races before. The pain of those near misses is still fresh. But this squad, this manager and this generation of players have spent years building towards exactly this moment. The question is whether they have the mental and technical quality to finish the job. Final analysis, where this leaves Arsenal. The evidence from today is complicated. Arsenal were not outplayed. Their expected goals were higher than Manchester City's. They hit the woodwork twice. They created a golden chance in the 95th minute. By almost every technical measure, they were close, but close is not enough. The reality for the club is that they now face the most important 5-game run in their recent history. The psychological challenge is significant. A 4-game losing run in domestic competition is not the form of champions, but the players, the manager and the supporters are all communicating the same message. It is not over. Arteta is right to point to the 3-point gap. He is right to remind everyone that 5 games remain. He is right to call this a new league from this point forward. But words must be backed by performances, and performances must be backed by clinical finishing, because today showed something important. Arsenal can compete with Manchester City at the highest level. Their pressing was outstanding, their structure was largely solid, their response to going behind showed genuine character. But when the big chances came in a season where margins are this fine, they did not go in. That is what separates champions from nearly men. And that is what Arsenal must fix across these final 5 games if they are going to make history this season. This is Melissa, Arsenal analyst. Thank you for watching. If this level of analysis is what you want every single time something this significant happens, subscribe to this channel right now. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think Arsenal need to do in these final 5 games, and I will see you in the next one.